women are pickier than men, and they have every right and reason to be, because mating is higher stakes for women than men.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
So there's some physical facts here. Women are more likely to, just because of the mechanics of the reproductive biology involved, women are more likely to contract STDs and STIs. Right. So sex itself is riskier. Second, pregnancy. This is kind of the elephant in the room in mating.
Yeah.
Is the fact that a man has the option, and this is we're talking about in our ancient past. Men had the option to seduce and abandon mates, right, in a way that women didn't necessarily, because women's investment in offspring is obligate to an extent. So pregnancy and lactation, those are things that are obligate investments, meaning that biologically they couldn't have been avoided at that time unless you were going to abandon the baby. Whereas men's investments were not obligate per se, right? They might have been socially obligate. We might want them to do that, but they could abandon it. Now, what does that lead to from a selective perspective? How does that change men's and women's underlying biology? Well, it means that when men are mating, they're taking less risk, right? Because if things go south, they can leave at any time, right? But if things go south for a woman, she might already have a baby on board. And it's like, I got to stick this out.
Yeah.
And so when women are in the initial stage, this is one of the reasons that most women won't just sleep with anybody, right? Whereas many men actually will, right? So women tend to be sexually more selective. They tend to want more decision-making time before these things. And then within a relationship, they tend to be, more likely to end the relationship, more likely to make decisions regarding switching mates. And it's because they have to be more picky. So I totally sympathize with it. It does go back to underlying biology, and like it's easy for men to see these statistics of like, oh, women are pickier. Gosh, I wish I was a woman. They have it so easy, but it's like not really, because it's like there's a reason that they're pickier, and the reason is costs, real costs. It's actually it's from a biological perspective, in this way. Men do have it quite easy because mating is lower stakes for us.
That's such a good point. It makes so much sense. And the first time I came across that was, and I think I sent it to both of you guys, was a study in terms of that apparently men, they don't really get over heartbreak as quickly as women, versus women, they do move on faster. And part of it is also because, well, they have higher stakes. Like, well, I can't be with this person, let's say it doesn't work out or whatever, well, I have to find somebody else because reproducing, more commitment, more responsibilities. And I guess that kind of ties into it as well.
It does. That scientist was using the same framework. I did read the study you sent me. So it looked like in his pilot study, it suggested that men might take longer, but it might take longer to get over breakups.
Right.
And again, the effect sizes were actually quite small, meaning that it wasn't like the sex difference isn't a huge deal. Like some of the news articles that we were looking at, right? Like the headline is they always do this, right? Like, so when I get interviewed by the paper or whatever, I'm always on the phone with them, like, don't do like this. Like I've literally called journalists back and been like, please change this headline, because they always do this like sensationalist, like crazy clickbait thing. It's like, oh, I didn't even say that. And in that case, it's like, in the interview, that scientist was like, some men may never get over heartbrait, right? That can happen. And that's obviously true. And then the headline is, scientist says men never get over heartbreak. And it's like, okay, he said like, sometimes, right? So, but the science of it, his pilot study did suggest that maybe men take longer to get over it.
Right.
But the real interesting finding for me was that, and this absolutely relates to our conversation, was that women generally had a harder time with breakups, right? They had more physical symptoms, more emotional symptoms from a breakup.
Right.
So if a breakup happens, it hurts more. And here's another interesting fact from his study that's kind of counterintuitive if you think about like stereotypes. As women get older, they get more upset by breakups. And the theoretical framework that might explain this is the fact that as a woman, your reproductive window is shorter.
Yeah.
And so each breakup is a bigger waste of your precious time. This is another reason why women's mating is high. I have tons of sympathy for kind of the women's side of the equation in terms of dating and relationships. And one of the reasons I do is because they have a time pressure that men simply don't have as intensely. Yes, male fertility and genetic quality declines with age. That's true. But it doesn't hard stop in the same way that women's does, and it doesn't decline as precipitously as women's does. So what we see is that, and this is just one study, but it's a large study. I believe it was 96 countries and several thousand participants. I think it's like 5,700 participants.
Correct.
This study suggested that women are more upset by breakups than men. And as they get closer to menopause, they get more and more upset by each breakup, which makes sense from a reproductive biology perspective. Like if you're a 23-year-old woman and you get dumped or have to dump your boyfriend because he cheated on you, right? Or you know, you just want to move on, whatever. It's like, okay, I'm 23. I've got time.
Yeah, I'll find someone else.
If you're 34 and you go through a breakup with a guy who, you know, you were hoping to reproduce with, that's devastating. It's oh my gosh. It's like, I've got to start, I'm 34 years old. I've got to start searching, right? How long does it take to find a good man, right? How long does it take to vet a good man to the point where you're like ready to reproduce with him? And then how long does it take to actually reproduce, right? Like it's not like conception happens first try. It's like, I think it's 85% of couples get pregnant within the first year. So, close to 1 in 5 of them or 1 in 6 of them are not able to in the first year. It takes longer than a year. So it's like, in terms of timing, going through a big breakup as a 34-year-old woman, that's clock reset in terms of finding a mate and then vetting a mate and then actually reproducing with a mate. It's like, even if everything happens perfectly, that's got to be a 3-year process, right? At least.
Yeah.
And the clock is ticking. So if it's not quick, that's a big deal. 34-year-old man, it's like, it's not ideal, right? It is still upsetting, but realistically, there are men who men can have the option to date younger in a way that women do not, if they want to reproduce.